Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the original Xbox One and see how this particular console holds up in 2025. Now, here's the thing I would definitely tell you about the Xbox One. This is one of those types of consoles that when I look at it, there probably are still some reasons why this type of console is still very good, but in some other ways, there might be a reason why these consoles may not necessarily be worth buying. So we'll take a look at it throughout this whole entire video. But if you do want to go ahead and pick up some consoles that I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description below. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the exact same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the original Xbox One, this particular console first came out back in 2013. So this console already is over 12 years old or almost 12 years old now. And that in and of itself is actually a very surprising thing. Like being able to go through and buy a console that's 12 years old that people are still interested in even kind of looking up is actually pretty insane in and of itself. Now, this console was coming off the heels of the Xbox 360 and the many variations of that console. A lot of people really enjoyed the Xbox 360. It was just like an amazing console throughout. And with the Xbox One, this was an interesting type of device because it was a more powerful version of the Xbox 360, but I believe with the Xbox, their way of describing what this particular console was may have been a little bit of a weirder type of experience for some people. Now, I will tell you, in my personal opinion, I think the Xbox One is still a very, very good looking console, but it is a interesting one because it looks just like a block for the most part, like a big brick. Now, when you look at the outside, this thing does actually look pretty good. You're getting your USB ports, you're getting your Blu-ray drive at the front, you're getting a memory expansion port, you can plug it in, you can go through and have your ports in the back. The interesting thing about the Xbox One was that you actually had two HDMI ports. A lot of people sometimes look at this and they're kind of confused. One of the HDMI ports is an HDMI in and the other one is an HDMI out. The reason this is even kind of cool is because you can go through and you can basically just like plug in your particular HDMI in inside of this console. And let's say you wanted to go and plug in like a different type of console. Let's say you had like a PlayStation 3 or your old Xbox 360 or a Nintendo Wii U or Switch at the time, whatever you had. You could go through and plug that inside of the HDMI in. And if your monitor had one HDMI port, you could go through and just, plug that particular port in and still be able to get it, your output, even though if you only had one device. So I thought that was a really cool thing. Some people really liked it. Some people may not care, but it is just one of those nice to have features at the end of the day. Now, on top of that, another very big thing to keep in mind here too is that with the Xbox One, you also had the controller. The controller for the Xbox One I thought was also very nice. I thought it was a good step up coming from the Xbox 360 controller, even though a majority of people like the 360 controller more. I kind of like the Xbox One controller, to be honest. I thought the controller looked nice, and it still is like a beautiful looking controller for the most part. Now, on top of that, when you go through and you essentially kind of, power on your Xbox One and all those things, you're still getting like a very good type of console for the most part. I think a console like the Xbox One, in terms of the build quality, it's very rugged, so it'll like take a beating, but it is a very big, bulky console. And with the further iterations of the Xbox One, Microsoft, the Xbox team, they ended up doing a much better job with that console, with the iterations of it rather than the original one, in my opinion. Now, one of the biggest advantages I would say for the Xbox One is basically the price tag of it. It's a very affordable type of console. It's not going to be costing that much money anymore. And that is basically one of the biggest advantages of something like an Xbox One when it comes down to it. So in my personal opinion, if you're about to go through and, pick up an Xbox, this one is definitely going to be giving you a pretty good experience in terms of the price tag standpoint, right? Because it is going to be a substantially cheap type of console. But another very big thing about the Xbox One is the gaming library behind it. There are so many different types of games that you can go ahead and play inside of this type of console, which in and of itself is very awesome. But when you actually take a look at these consoles as well, you have to remember that, in my personal opinion, if you are about to go through and pick up a console like this, you're not only getting, massive gaming library, but you're also able to go through and pick up these types of, games at a fraction of the cost. They don't really cost that much money anymore. And I think that right there is another really big advantage for these types of consoles. They're not really going to cost as much as you think they're going to cost. And I would probably tell you from that side as well, that right there is going to be another really cool thing to keep in mind there too. So just from that in and of itself, right? Like if I'm about to go through and like pick up a console, I think that right there is going to be a very big takeaway of being able to go ahead and get a device that is going to be giving you an overall better experience. And I will tell you from that side in and of itself, something like an Xbox One in terms of the gaming library is going to be awesome. And because it does play the Xbox 360 games and the original Xbox games, those are another really cool types of things to basically have inside of your device as well. Now, on top of that, another very big thing here is the ability of playing all your games offline. So you don't really have to go through and, buy a subscription model if you don't want to. All of these games were, especially the first Xbox and maybe even the 360, they were basically games that you could just play without having a specific like subscription model through, Microsoft. So that right there could also be another really cool thing to kind of keep in mind there as well. And I would say if you're going to go through and like pick up a gaming console, I do think that in and of itself is another one of those really nice things to basically have there as well. So in my opinion, from that side, those are the good things. Now, there are some negative things you could kind of throw in here for this type of console as well when it kind of comes down to it. So number one, I would say, if you're about to go through and pick up these types of consoles, you're probably going to have to remember that these types of devices, they're probably going to be giving you somewhat of like a limited type of experience in terms of like software updates and games that are coming out for it. The Xbox One is not really getting any more types of games available inside of this type of console. So that right there can be a pretty big disadvantage depending on who you are, because you might want to be able to go ahead and buy a console that still is giving you like some sort of software updates ahead of it. And that's really not quite what's going on anymore, right? Like this console is basically done getting software updates. So because of that, it's not getting any more new features, it's not getting any more things inside of it. But the biggest thing too is that there's no more games available for it, or there's no more games being developed for it. So if that's a really big deal to you, then clearly there might be some better options out there for the most part. So I would probably tell you from that side as well, if you're looking at other types of consoles, there might be some better ones out there, and these ones are going to be giving you somewhat of like a limited type of experience when it comes down to that side, in my personal opinion. Once again, not the biggest deal in the world, but like I said, it can be kind of a big disadvantage depending on who you are. Now, on top of that, when it kind of comes down to the performance and this, load times, the load times and the performance are going to be, again, a little bit lackluster here as well. They're definitely going to be showing their age. And when you're getting a console like this, it is going to be somewhat of a limited type of experience when it kind of comes down to it, because it's just not going to be that fast of a gaming console anymore. So I would say that also is kind of a big downside for this type of device as well. So in my personal opinion, I would probably tell you in a lot of ways, it really doesn't make a lot of sense to go ahead and buy an Xbox One anymore. Now, the reason for that is not because it's terrible. I do think this is a decent console, but I think the Xbox One S or the Xbox One X would be a better option. I think it fixes a lot of the issues that you would theoretically experience with the original Xbox One. And I feel like if you are about to go through and pick up a console, those are the ones I'd probably recommend buying more so than this one. I think this one, for the most part, can still give you like a decent experience and like a decent time. And I genuinely don't think it's like that bad of a console, but I just think that there's some better options out there. And that's personally just kind of how I see it. But again, when it kind of comes down to it, I would probably recommend buying the Xbox, One S or One X over this particular console. So from that side, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.